Marilyn Monroe was not just another Hollywood actress, she was a symbol of beauty, fame, and mystery. For decades, her story has captured the imagination of millions around the world. Many people admired her glamorous lifestyle, while others wondered about the pain hidden behind her smile. Her life, as much as her death, became the subject of endless discussions, books, and films. Even today, more than 60 years after her passing, new questions and suspicions continue to surface about what really happened to her. Marilyn's story is not simple. It is filled with struggles, triumphs, broken relationships, and mysteries that may never be fully solved. To understand the tragedy of Marilyn Monroe, we have to go back to her earliest years and see how a little girl named Norma Jean became the most famous woman in the world. And more importantly, we need to explore why her death is still surrounded by confusion and dark theories that refuse to go away. Marilyn Monroe was born as Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1, 1926. Her mother, Gladys, loved her child, but she suffered from serious mental health problems. Because of this, she could not raise Norma in a safe and stable home. As a result, the little girl grew up in foster homes and even spent time in an orphanage. Sadly, Marilyn's early years were not only unstable, but also full of pain. Reports suggest that she was abused as a child, an experience that left permanent scars on her heart and mind. These wounds would follow her throughout her life, shaping her search for love and acceptance. At just 16 years old, Norma married her neighbor, James Dougherty. This marriage was not for love, but for survival. It was her way of escaping the difficult life she had been trapped in. No teenager should have to make such a decision, but for Marilyn, it was the only option. From this painful start, no one could have guessed that this young girl would one day become one of the biggest icons in history. But her journey from Norma Jean to Marilyn Monroe was just beginning. Marilyn's rise to fame started with modeling. People were drawn to her unique look, her expressive eyes, and her charming smile. She had something special, something that made her unforgettable. Soon, Hollywood studios noticed her potential. They gave her small acting roles, and slowly she was transformed into the woman the world would know as Marilyn Monroe. Her hair was dyed platinum blonde, her voice was trained into a soft, breathy style, and even her walk and laugh were shaped to fit her new public image. The shy Norma Jean began to disappear, replaced by the glamorous Marilyn. However, this transformation was not entirely fake. Marilyn herself took part in creating her new persona. For her, it was a way to feel in control and to build self-worth after years of instability. Still, behind the makeup and bright lights, she sometimes struggled with who she truly was. While many saw her as just a dumb blonde, Marilyn worked hard to prove she was more than that. She studied acting seriously, trained with respected teachers, and pushed herself to take on dramatic roles that showed depth and emotion. She poured her pain into her performances, leaving audiences amazed at the raw honesty she brought to the screen. Even as her fame grew, Marilyn was often lonely. She longed for someone who could see past the Hollywood image and love her for who she truly was. This desire led her into relationships that were as dramatic as her films. One of the most famous was with baseball legend Joe DiMaggio. On the outside, their relationship looked like the perfect American love story. She was the glamorous movie star, and he was the national sports hero. Fans adored the couple, and when they married in 1954, it seemed like a dream come true. But, behind closed doors, things were different. Joe expected Marilyn to be a quiet, domestic wife, while she was becoming an even bigger star. The breaking point came during the filming of The 7-Year Itch, when Marilyn's dress famously blew up over a subway grate. While the scene thrilled audiences, Joe saw it as humiliating. Their fights grew worse, and only 9 months after the wedding, Marilyn filed for divorce. Yet, even after the separation, Joe remained a constant presence in her life. He never truly stopped caring for her, showing his loyalty in ways that would later become clear after her death. After DiMaggio, Marilyn fell in love with playwright Arthur Miller. He was the opposite of Joe, thoughtful, intellectual, and deeply Respected in his field, Marilyn wanted more than glamour. She wanted someone who could see her as a serious, intelligent woman. When she married Miller in 1956, she felt she had finally found real love. She even converted to Judaism before the wedding to embrace his world. But the reality of marriage was much harsher than her dreams. Marilyn discovered Miller's private notes in which he wrote that he felt disappointed in her. This revelation broke her heart. At the same time, she struggled with multiple miscarriages, each loss leaving her weaker and more fragile. Their marriage slowly crumbled under the weight of emotional pain and Marilyn's growing dependence on medication. They divorced in 1961, just before the release of The Misfits, a movie Miller had written for her. The film was meant as a gift, but it became a painful reminder of a love that had not lasted. To many, it seemed that Marilyn was always searching for someone who would accept the real Norma Jean, not just the Hollywood star. If Marilyn's marriages were stormy, her rumored affairs with President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert Kennedy became the most controversial chapters of her life. The rumors were fueled by her famous Happy Birthday, Mr. President performance in 1962. Dressed in a sparkling gown, she sang in a voice so playful and intimate that it shocked the public. The performance only added to whispers that she was romantically involved with the president. Some biographers even claimed she had been close to both brothers. What made this especially troubling was that Marilyn was a woman with secrets of her own personal struggles, her therapy sessions, and her feelings of betrayal. If she really had connections to the Kennedys, many wondered whether she held sensitive information that could damage powerful men. These rumors only became more intense after her sudden death later that year. On August 4, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was at her home in Brentwood, Los Angeles. According to the official report, her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, became concerned around 3 a.m. and called Marilyn's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, who broke into her room and found her dead. Soon after, her physician, Dr. Hyman Engelberg, arrived. The official story was that Marilyn had overdosed on sleeping pills. It sounded like a sad but simple explanation. A troubled star who could not cope with life any longer. But almost immediately, questions arose. Why were the police called only after 4 a.m., more than 30 minutes after her body was supposedly discovered? Why did some neighbors report seeing an ambulance outside her home much earlier in the evening, around 10 p.m.? And why did Eunice Murray change her story about when she first became worried, first saying it was around midnight, then later claiming it was at 3 a.m.? These inconsistencies suggested that something was being covered up. The more investigators looked into Marilyn's death, the more contradictions they found. For example, reports claimed that Robert Kennedy had visited her house the same afternoon she died, and that their meeting ended in a heated argument. If true, this raised serious questions. What did they argue about? Was Marilyn threatening to reveal her relationship with the Kennedys? Witnesses also claimed that important items from her home disappeared before police arrived, including phone records and diaries that may have contained sensitive information. Even stranger, when the autopsy was performed, there was no sign of pill residue in her stomach, despite the claim that she had swallowed dozens of capsules. Instead, high levels of toxic substances were found in her blood and liver, suggesting that the drugs may have been injected. But if Marilyn did not inject herself, who did? These details only fueled suspicions that her death was not as simple as the official report claimed. 20 years after Marilyn's death, public pressure forced the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office to reopen the case in 1982. For 3 months, investigators reviewed old evidence and interviewed witnesses. In the end, they concluded that Marilyn had either died by accident or by suicide, closing the case once again. But even the investigators admitted that serious questions remained. Two troubling issues stood out. First, the unclear source of all the medication found in her system, and second, the unexplained delay in contacting the police. Investigators also noted that several important pieces of evidence had gone missing, including therapy tapes where Marilyn sounded positive about her future, If she was planning for the future, why would she suddenly end her life? For many people, the official explanations simply did not add up. Writers, journalists, and former officials have continued to explore Marilyn's death. Some believe she was silenced because of what she knew about the Kennedys. Others think she became the victim of an accidental overdose that was later covered up to protect powerful people. Former Drug Enforcement Officer James Hall even claimed that Robert Kennedy was present the night Marilyn died. Surveillance experts later said that her home had been bugged and that she knew her privacy was being invaded. If true, this means Marilyn was under incredible pressure, caught between fame, politics, and dangerous secrets. For her fans, it is difficult to believe that she would simply give up. She had survived a painful childhood, abusive relationships, and the brutal Hollywood system. She was not weak, she was a fighter. And yet, her death continues to be officially labeled as an overdose, leaving many unsatisfied with the truth. Even after their divorce, Joe DiMaggio remained loyal to Marilyn. He helped arrange her funeral and made sure her memory was honored with dignity. For 20 years after her death, he had roses delivered to her grave 3 times a week, a symbol of his never-ending devotion. But he also blamed Frank Sinatra for introducing her to the Kennedys, believing that those powerful connections had led to her downfall. In the end, Marilyn's story is not just about fame or mystery. It is about a woman who tried again and again to find love, acceptance, and peace, but who was constantly pulled into a world of pressures she could not escape. The tragedy of Marilyn Monroe's death remains one of the greatest mysteries in Hollywood history. The missing evidence, the conflicting testimonies, and the powerful names linked to her life all raise doubts about the official version. Was it a tragic accident? Was it suicide? Or was she silenced to protect secrets too dangerous to reveal? We may never know for sure. But one thing is certain. Marilyn was much more than the dumb blonde image she was often given. She was a survivor of childhood trauma, a hardworking actress, and a woman who inspired millions with her strength and vulnerability. Instead of remembering her only as a tragic figure, we should honor her as someone who fought through incredible struggles to leave a lasting mark on the world.